Jess Fracalossi. Welcome back to the Deep Life.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm just chomping at the bits to kind of dive deep into this. It's been too long since we've had you on again, but we're excited to kind of dive deep today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think last time you were on, we talked a lot, and I feel like just as we started getting deep, we kind of ran out of time. So now it's our chance to really really dig in there and kind of figure some stuff out and see where we stand.
Awesome. A little less background, a little more meat.
Yeah, there you go. It's gonna get meaty in here. I want to talk a little bit about just fitness in general and kind of the bigger picture of like holistic wellness, because watching you from sort of the outside, like knowing you for a long time and watching, the Handle Bar grow at the same time, there's something really different, I think, about you guys in the fitness space. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've noticed, being in the fitness industry for over 10 years now, is that I think a lot of people, once, for whatever reason, they'll start getting into fitness, they want to look a certain way, feel a certain way. But as they go down that path of fitness, it starts to broaden, or at least for a lot of people, it broadens more into like an overall feeling of wellness and like sort of holistic wellness, where you start to realize that everything is so closely interconnected and you can't just worry about your workout because there's so much else that goes into it. And it's your nutrition, it's your sleep, it's your relationships, it's all these other aspects of life. Mm-hmm. And just watching you for, the last 10 years kind of running this business, it seems like your thought process is very much more along the lines of holistic wellness than just fitness. Like, come in here and get a really good workout and everybody will have a great butt and abs. It's a much more like big picture thing. But I do know from talking to you that you didn't come up in fitness sort of the same way that I did, where I've always been obsessed with fitness, and then over time it was this natural progression, where for you, I think you had a lot of this already and came in. So I'm kind of curious, just sort of your thoughts on wellness and how all these things kind of fit together.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I definitely am a fitness professional, right? And I'm a businesswoman in the fitness industry. But unlike a lot of individuals in leadership positions in this industry, for me, it wasn't fitness first. It wasn't, a lot of folks are teaching or participating at a high level for years before they decide they want to turn that passion into a business. Mm-hmm. For me, it was sort of noticing, I think, the value in boutique fitness and the differentiators as a consumer, and really just in the initial months of consumption. Like, I hadn't done boutique fitness for very long before I started thinking that I wanted to get involved. But as a consumer, noticing what made boutique fitness different for me and the business opportunity that existed there and how I could use my personal strengths to make it happen. Let's see, I feel like for me, it was always in the original business plan for the Handle Bar. It was as much about community as it was about physical fitness. And that point remains. And it's something that now that I'm head of brand and no longer just CEO overseeing everything, I'm really focused in more on who we are as a brand and what we do to market who we are and to keep our clients coming back. It's workouts that you can stick with and community that you can count on. And the latter is really where I spend most of my time and effort is how do we live up to this promise that we're a community that you can count on? And that means engaging with our audience from big to small, from me as an individual to my direct colleagues to our 150 part-time employees, all the way down to 7,000 users a week that come through our doors. How are we engaging with them and providing them community they can count on? And I think that is what has made us and made our product so sticky, is that people recognize that. And whether they come to the Handle Bar as their first kind of expedition into formal group fitness, or if they've tried a bunch of places first and then they land on the handlebar later. Or what I see in many cases is come try the handlebar, go do other things, explore their body, explore what works for them when it comes to physical fitness, but end up gravitating back to the handlebar because of the authentic community-based nature of what we do. And I think that sort of sums up how I've arrived where I am. Is I'm a community builder, and I keep going back to those roots on a daily basis. Is how do I build and maintain community rather than how do I make these workouts flashier, harder, more intense, more trendy, more cool? To me, that stuff is as cheap as it's just like I don't care about the cool factor. That happens naturally when you hire really cool people and you focus on quality. Instead, I focus on how do I provide a healthy place where people can come together and share core values with one another and better themselves in the long term.
Well, that makes so much sense. Yeah, I think community is so important. And I think what most gyms or fitness studios don't want to tell you is that the community aspect is probably much larger than the actual fitness, because just being around other healthy, happy, well-adjusted people changes your life, and it puts you in a situation where you're just always you're absorbing that constantly, and you want to contribute and be a part of it and help others grow. And I think it happens probably really fast.
That's exactly right. And I think it happens simultaneously at the client level and the employee level. So, and that has been a thread for me over the past 10 years that has kept me grounded and glued to the right priorities, is making sure that not just the clients are getting self-betterment from their experience at the handlebar, but that the employees are getting self-betterment. And that means, opportunities at professional growth, yes, but like real genuine chances for everybody involved in the community to form lasting relationships with like-minded people. And that's my idea of success, is like even the folks that have moved on from the handlebar community, whether they've just retired as instructors or they've actually graduated onto different workouts because spin is no longer for them, or what have you, they've maintained and built relationships at the handlebar that have lived on, that are lifelong friendships. And to me, that is just, it's indicative of people are, for lack of a better word, drinking the Kool-Aid. They're showing up. They're not just consuming, they're giving. And that again, I think is what makes it sticky, is like you are engaging in a community. You're not just showing up and taking it for what you need it for. You're showing up and giving to it. And then it becomes this synergistic relationship where you're giving and you're taking, and it needs you as much as you need it. And then you're committed. And and that leads to kind of, I think, and you mentioned it in your notes about this call, but wellness, I think a big part of holistic wellness is about contributing to the community around you.
Yeah, I think there's an energy along with that too. Dan and I talk a lot on the podcast, like everything is energy. Everything is in connection with one another. And there is also a vibration that goes along with it. You've heard the term good vibes or bad vibes or something. There is just, gosh, from even going to class 10 years ago, and we haven't been to a spin class just because we didn't live here for so long, but there's an energy that accompanies your studios. And it is a big part because of you and what you did to cultivate this kind of loving energy that you put into it, where it wasn't just for financial gain. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm sure that is a huge part of it. And of course, we're in this human experience. We need to make money, but there is something that goes along with the energy that is accepting, because from the employee level, then it's transferred to the riders. Then from there, the riders are taking it into their daily lives. So it's kind of like this cyclical flow of beautiful energy that encompasses and touches all of everybody's lives that people probably aren't aware of, but they're just recognizing the feeling, which is kind of maybe why you said, like, they're coming back. They'll go to the handlebar for a little bit, try something different, but going back, there's like this specific energy that emanates, and it's just, it's probably indescribable, but it's there. And I feel like I feel it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we get this client feedback all the time. And even if you look at like our Google reviews and things like that, like a lot of people don't know how to describe it, but it's just the feeling that they get when they're in our studios, when they leave our studios, that sense of community, and that can be kind of indescribable, but this sense of support, like you are being held by something, and you are giving and taking to something when you come through our doors. Yeah, and I do believe, I mean, I'll take credit for it all day long. It's definitely a top-down,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. As
you
it's
know,
rightfully there for, yes. I mean, you've created this from nothing, and that is huge. And I feel like, imagine, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want
that's
to
okay.
sing your praises. Like, imagine if small business owners, and I think probably maybe a lot of them are like that, but put as much loving energy into it, like how different
Yeah.
the world would be, whether it's in the fitness space or not. Like,
Yeah.
this is so badly what humanity needs right now,
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Mm-hmm.
feeling this horrible capitalistic divide that's, I don't even know what's happening with it. I
Yes.
don't want to get into it, but
Yeah.
that's what I want to like highlight. Like this is at like the core, the depths of who you are, that put this energy into your business.
Yes. Yes. I think small business owners, certainly in fitness, I see it in conversation with other studio owners of different sizes. It's so natural and so easy to compare yourself to the big chains, and to hold those standards at a high regard, and as kind of like aspirational. And I've had a couple of really meaningful conversations over the years, and meaningful experiences, including the pandemic, that have rooted me in the fact that we have the most power as a community, and I can have the most impact as an entrepreneur at a specific size. And we're kind of right there. Like if you talk about scaling, and I think a lot of small business owners are seeking to scale and to grow. And it takes a lot to get over the hump of that first location. And then pretty soon it's kind of like, okay, let's go multi-city, and that can happen. And it's like, so what seems like a really quick decision can actually change the course of your impact and your ability to do the things that are most meaningful for the people that are participating. There's nothing against that, and it's capitalism, but it certainly, what I've built at the Handle Bar wouldn't have been possible if we were a multi-city company. It's just not. The fibers of who we are have to do with being local, and holding on to roots in not only Boston but in each individual neighborhood. So yeah, I think I've lucked out with some important decisions at timely moments, not to franchise, not to open in Providence, right before
Yeah.
COVID. Things like that I look back and it's kind of like, phew, we really not necessarily dodged a bullet, but we just protected the sanctity of who we are by not doing that. And one of my favorite quotes is like, success, or the hardest decisions sometimes surround, the hardest and most important decisions sometimes surround the opportunities you don't take. And I think that's been very, very true for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of measure and quantify impact. And a lot of times, like with capitalism, I'm not trying to speak poorly about capitalism. I think everybody deserves to be rewarded for their effort.
Pretty
and their work.
shitty downward spiral system.
Yeah,
but.
exactly. You can get really caught up in that chase where, like you said, like every small business all want to scale up because the numbers go on forever. If you look at it that way, there's always more, there's always more, there's always more.
Yeah.
But like you said, like not taking those opportunities and having a bigger impact in different ways, and maybe more of like a 360-degree kind of growth within each community, your impact has been so much greater probably than what it would have been if you had kept going just to be bigger, where maybe you would
Absolutely.
have made more money and higher profits, but the impact wouldn't be there. The energy, like Elise was saying, wouldn't be the same in each
Yes.
studio.
No, and the turnover would have been so much greater.
Mhm.
I just think like we're so lucky to have something real that the employees grasp onto. They're getting real benefits from this besides outside of a paycheck. And that's because we're local. It's because we do things for the community. We create experience for our members. We create experience for our employees that they're just simply not going to find at a I don't want to use any national competitor names, but it's just like when you are a number on a spreadsheet and
Sure.
your closest superior is just a studio manager, and then you've never met anybody higher than that.
Mhm.
But when the team knows the owners and they know our mission and they see it taking shape in our quarterly goals, like I think that leads to loyalty, and that leads to it makes things easier to sustain when you've got these brand advocates and company advocates that stick with you years and years in. Um, you no longer have to reteach, reiterate with new faces, and then you play the telephone game of who we are, and it becomes distorted, the bigger you get.
Mhm.
But when you have this type of retention and loyalty, it's like the impact just gets deeper and more lasting.
Yeah, I love that you used you said sustainable. Use the word
Yeah.
sustainable, and it's more sustainable, I think, from a business standpoint for in like your experience and the employee experience, but it also I think makes the fitness experience more sustainable for the people that are going because they
Yes.
have there's that energy when they walk in, and there's the familiarity and the community, and there's like this like you're picking up on the frequency of all the other people that are around you that are also doing the same thing, and it gives you more energy, it gives you more reason to want to show up, and I think that helps people so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, uh, a couple years into the business, certainly pre-COVID, was on a bit of a treadmill of upping the ante. How do we elevate? How do we raise the bar? How do we take this to the next level? How do we make our classes harder? How do we make our lighting more flashy? How do we and I've realized that it's not necessary. That's not what keeps people coming back. In fact, people want consistency. They want these workouts that they can
Mhm.
stick with. They want to understand what they're coming in for. They want to be able to be doing something that is healthy in the long term and it's reliable and it's not changing as the years change. So yeah, that has been a really great realization. I mean, during COVID, I started talking about sustainable fitness before COVID, sustainable fitness business before COVID, and then COVID happened. It was like sustainable just meant something totally different. It was just like
Mhm.
survival, But now that we're beyond it, actually have seen a really wonderful data and anecdotal trends of this younger generation um, uh, falling into and falling in love with what we offer. And that has been so uplifting to see Gen
Mhm.
Z spinning and loving it and loving what we offer, loving what the kind of events and things that we're doing. And it's just case in point that the cool factor is bullshit. It doesn't matter. Like, don't
Mhm.
focus on trying to be cool. Focus on being real. And I think this Gen Z crowd that has come in, and I've read a lot about it, and I see it, like I said, anecdotally, they're looking for authenticity, and they see that at the Handle Bar, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so I'm really proud of that, and it gives us a lot of stability for the future that we've got this younger crew that now is in love with the class and the product, and they're just getting settled in Boston. So I'm proud
That's
and
really
excited
Mhm.
for that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Were you
Yeah,
gonna say
well, I
something?
was just that's a really like sort of interesting conversation. I think since like the way people talk about Gen Z since COVID is like, oh, these kids, they don't want to work, nobody wants to do anything, they think they're too cool for everything. And it is like, it's maybe what they need is like authenticity and
Yeah.
deeper connections. And there's something also really beautiful about that generation that doesn't want to put up with the bullshit that clearly doesn't work.
Right, right. Will they fit into the system as it exists? Maybe not. And maybe
Mhm.
it's going to cause some sort of major change. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that there is a resistance to falling in line with things as they are. But there's so much change happening with AI and just globally. There's a lot, just so much
Mhm.
volatility and uncertainty that I think is scary, but also sort of hopeful that there's some sort of emergence that's going to happen that really shifts the way that things are. And if we see this younger generation seeking authenticity, seeking real wellness, seeking real connection,
Yeah.
despite having been raised on screens, I think that bodes really well for our future. It's just like they're not just gonna throw on VR and do workouts in their living room. You know, they
Yeah.
want this in-person interaction. We all do. And I everybody, you know, a lot of people told me that during COVID, people will come back. They crave the in-person. But I doubted it. I was scared, you know, that it was going to go the other way and we were going to stay disconnected. And but it feels really promising to know that it is innate to who we are as humans, and our fulfillment comes from connectedness with one another.
Mhm.
Yeah. I kind of thought of this question as you were talking about authenticity and describing this younger generation and wanting just things that are real. Like
Mhm.
nobody cares about the lights and like nobody cares. Like
Yeah.
it's so refreshing to me to hear that. This wasn't necessarily one of the kind of questions that we touched upon, but I'd love for you to personally kind of dive into what you've stayed true to yourself
Yeah.
authentically. I
Yeah.
mean, so much of our lives, this is just from my opinion, is trying to figure out who the fuck we actually are,
Yeah.
who we are in this world, what our purpose is, what's about life. And I mean, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But where you have come into kind of this insanely successful role of a woman business owner at such a young age, like how did you take that and what you've learned and what you've continued to learn and grow? Because also knowing you've changed a lot over the last 10 years and have adapted to what's needed to kind of get you to where you are now. Again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. That's why I want you to kind of go deep on this, because it's all about self-discovery. Okay,
Yeah.
Dan and I were always asking the deeper questions. Why are we here? Why are we in this situation? Why the heck did we all have to go through COVID? And why did it hit some people and not others? And, you know, why did certain businesses fail and not others? Why did some people thrive in
Mhm.
becoming healthier and other people to their detriment during this time?
Mhm.
Everything's different. But, you know, from your experience, how have you kind of stayed grounded within yourself, trying to
Yes.
kind of authentically show up as, you know, who you are? Or maybe you completely changed and you needed to adapt in a way. I'm so curious to kind of how you've taken this approach.
Yeah. I will say that I think where I am now is, and where I seek to be, is this continued state of like radical accountability, of accepting and admitting that life is suffering and shit's going to be hard and no one's going to save you. And um, knowing that, leaning into the work, leaning into the everyday process of self-betterment, uh, identity seeking, you know, like just presence seeking, and knowing that that process is necessary, and as soon as it starts to disintegrate, everything else will fall apart with it. I'm kind of like rambling in one direction here, but I do think that that has been a big change for me, is understanding that life isn't about pleasure. Life isn't about fun. Life is about enduring. It's about getting through these challenges and experiencing everything that comes along with that challenge, not
Yeah.
masking it, not covering it up and saying, this feels really hard, so I'm going to, escape in this direction to try to get through it without pain. No, in fact, it's the experience of the pain and the staying aware and conscious through it that I think brings a lot of fulfillment and understanding. This is me just kind of talking about my own experience through COVID, but
Well, it's almost like you're describing being radically present with yourself in each moment, which is something that Dan and I have newly developed,
yeah,
because we get stuck in the past typically with how things were. Those are where our stories come from. Not that that's a bad thing at all. The past is there to teach us,
yeah,
not trap us.
yes,
And that, I think, is where people can get stuck in their ways. And it's like,
yes,
all we have right now is the present moment. And I
yes,
love that you brought it back into feeling into pain. That's what this human experience is all about.
yeah,
And I mean, that could be the pain of, obviously we know that like your father passed away. We talked about this immensely on the first podcast. That's a pain and a grief like only you have experienced that. But then there's also the pain of going up the damn mountain at like full speed on the bike too, right? There's different levels of pain. And
yes,
all of it serves such a bigger purpose than
yeah,
we even realize. But
yeah,
exactly like you said, so many of us try to run from these uncomfortable feelings that
yes,
if we can simply accept them
mm-hmm.
and learn. I think that this is something that I'm trying to really learn right now, is just learning to be with them. Like,
Yeah,
what part of me is trying to escape, and can I just sit with that part of me
yeah,
that can move me to the next moment? Because
yeah,
that's all I've got. The future
right,
is also, the future will replay itself from a predictable past,
yeah,
but we want to create our future from the
mm-hmm.
present moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think another piece for me is what to do with that self-exploration, if anything at all. And I think a big part of me, um, especially at the beginnings of the pandemic, pre-pandemic, I felt like my relationship with social media and with my image and perception of by largely the handlebar community, the people that work for me, the people that take part, my outlet for kind of displaying who I am, what it was my social media page. It was anytime I had sort of an awakening moment, I felt like the need to share it, felt like the need to put it in writing, post a great picture with it, be validated through likes and comments. And there is so much to that, right? I think there's there's a lot of people doing really great things using social media and helping a lot of people. And I do believe I could be one of those people if I were to get back to it. However, I think monumental realization for me was that I can do so much more through my work at the Handlebar than I can through my individual posts on Instagram. And I think that's probably true for anybody, is that the amount that you can do through your real relationships and the work that you do on a daily basis, whether it be with friends and family or professionally, is such an opportunity for cementing your identity and like landing in who you are deeper and more meaningfully. So that was big for me. It was nice to be able to feel like just a redirect of my energy. It was like, okay, I don't have to shout from the hilltops of who I am. I just need to do great work. And then that resonates and trickles down in a way that that people see and feel. And and those closest to me know who I am, and that's enough, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was just gonna say how you show up authentically. It's just in a different way, but it's like it's that energy that you're emanating because you're staying true to yourself.
Social
Yes.
media can get really tricky because even with the best intentions, it's like set up to make you feel like you need validation. Or it's like you can
Yes.
make a great post and share like the most authentic truth, and then nobody likes it, and then you don't feel it's not as good a truth anymore.
Right.
It can be
Right.
really tricky, but also I love how you said like leaning into your work more, and that way
Yes.
it's almost
Yeah.
like you can do something really really well and not worry about what other people are going to think about it or what your intentions actually are, because you know that you're just trying to make an impact with people. And
Yes. Yes, definitely. Um, and like it helps with navigating uncertainty, I think, which has remained for me as a business owner, and now coming through a merger where the business itself is back to where it was pre-COVID, and then things feel very much, the energy in studios feel like it did pre-pandemic. But for me as an owner operator, things are starkly different than they used to be because of merging with another company, having other owners that I work with every day. And so my work, putting my awareness into my work, and acting on principle and kind of staying on my mat every day in the way that I engage with my work, it 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 calms the uncertainty. I think I can control what I can control, um, and by focusing on moving forward with a principles first mindset, staying in my four walls of my mat, or however you want to call it, staying seated in what I'm doing. That is like lasting and sustainable fulfillment and peace and um, work product. And then if all of it crumbles around me, and the uncertainty pans out in a negative way, as it's done in the past, what remains is like foundations of an identity that I want to continue being, that I will continue to be. Yeah, that was long-winded, but
Oh,
yeah,
no.
that's great.
No, I think that's beautiful. I love that you said that. And I appreciate also your vulnerability in talking about this and the changes and the ensuing and what's gone on. And I love that you used the word aware. Like you're almost bringing more awareness into your work now.
yes.
And I love it. I think that that is something that we try to cultivate, obviously, within our show and like clients that we've worked with and stuff. It's like becoming aware of a bigger, deeper picture,
Mhm.
because, fitness is such a beautiful example of wanting to better yourself.
Mhm.
A lot of times, and this was certainly me, I did it from a vanity standpoint where I had such a low self-worth that I thought everybody was going to like me if I was like thin and beautiful, how unfortunately society has pegged that as something women needs to attain. Of course, I rode that horse for a very long time, but that at least got my foot in the door.
Yeah.
Because when I then became aware of how my body changed through physical fitness, I was able to become more aware of the other aspects of my life that could contribute to almost a better mental state,
Mhm.
where I was then able to be like, all right, my body's following suit. Like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Like, can I eat better? Can I sleep better? Can I journal? Can I meditate? Can I do what? And it was almost like this cyclical spiral that we always call it. It was like new things would come, other things would happen, but it made me become more aware
Mhm.
of the wholeness of this kind of wellness spectrum that Dan and we kind of brought up at the beginning of the conversation. It's like, how do you get people to become more aware without saying it? And it's
Yes.
I can only speak from my experience, because everybody also throughout this human life is experiencing things differently.
Yeah.
So like this was my trajectory, and I can only speak from experience. I'm sure
Mhm.
Dan can share his experience, but that's why we wanted to get into kind of yours. And
Yeah.
like, was there a definitive moment of like, okay, wait a minute, I'm actually becoming way more aware of the energy, the attention that I'm putting into my work. Sometimes it is a catastrophe like COVID, like that
Right.
really is a silver lining
Yeah.
or the shit show that it was, or anything. Like, you hear so many people, are diagnosed with something or get in a horrific accident and it changes their life. It's like boom, boom, in an instant, they're like almost woken up from a unconscious dream that they didn't even know they were in. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm aware of everything right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then from my experience, the more that I'm becoming aware, there's more awareness that is also showing up. Like, okay, I can now almost observe and become aware of like the thoughts that are going on
Yes.
inside. And I think that that's what you beautifully just said. Probably, I don't know if you knew this, but wow, what a profound statement you said, that you wanted to, vocalize on social media, put like a great picture with like an epiphany, truthful moment that you had, and like all you wanted was comments and likes. But then you're
Mhm.
like, well, why did I want that?
Yeah.
That's almost like the definition of awareness without knowing it, right? You're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, why do I need that? What part of me is seeking validation from
Yeah.
anything that's outside of me?
Right. Right. Um, yeah,
That's a
you use
loaded question.
no, for sure. You use the word observe, and that word in relationship with consciousness and awareness was the bridge to understanding for me. Um, I read a book by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul,
Mhm.
I think in 2021. And that's when it kind of all clicked for me, was this idea that you're the observer, and you're the observer of your thoughts, of your feelings. Um, if you can stay in the seat of your soul through calamity, through pain, through pleasure, through all of it, then you will arrive at this uh, place of continuous peace. Even in the hardest of times. And of course, it's a constant practice, and it's easier said than done. But um, the more I get back to that word observe, on a daily basis, on a momentary basis, the more peace I feel, and the healthier I am and remain. So yeah, that was kind of the aha moment for me when it comes to mindfulness and awareness, was this notion that I, capital I, am the observer. I am not the pain. I am not the thoughts. I am not the obsession. I am the observer of these things. And it's the same I that was at 7 years old and that will be at 70, is that observer of the feelings that come up, and then um, my behavior, a response, is kind of a result of how observant I'm being. Am I being pulled out of my seat by the feelings and acting in accordance with being out of my seat, or am I sitting back, observing the feelings, and behaving in accordance with somebody who's seated and watching what's happening to them? So that was all really Michael Singer's kind of words from the book Untethered Soul. I can't recommend that one enough. It just sort of brought everything down to earth for me. But yeah, and then with regards to fitness, it's always been, let's see, it definitely has changed from in college. Well, in high school, I was a competitive athlete, a swimmer. And so I didn't have to think about calories, anything like that, because it was just two workouts a day. It was like, couldn't eat enough, just never thought about it. Get to college, things really change. Your eating habits change. Um, I'm no longer on part of a team. I no longer have a rigid schedule. Um, and so there definitely was a period of time in college, and luckily for me, it was short-lived, where there was just an unsustainable, unhealthy relationship between the calorie counter on the elliptical and the choices I made in the cafeteria and the math equations in my head and the self-punishment type of behavior that goes along with that. So yeah, that happened for a few years for me. And I'm trying to remember what kind of jolted me out of it. And I think it could have been in my, post-college years as I started creating the Handle Bar was fitness started turning into more of a less of a self-punishment burn type relationship and more of like, okay, this is on my list because completing my list is what brings me fulfillment. And it's that entire list. It's the hydrating, it's the journaling, and not all of these came to me at once. Like I just started journaling in the last year and a half, but whatever that sort of packet of self-care items are, fitness lives within that list. It's not like the main thing. It happens to be something that is fairly time consuming because, you have to get a certain number of minutes in for it to really make a difference. But yeah, I think that's when it shifted as like a continuous checkbox, not of like obligation, but just like, I do this because this is what leads to fulfillment is this habit, this habit, this habit, and this habit. And on a daily basis, not one of those is more important than the other. It's like if any of them starts to fall off, you feel it. And that's nutrition, it's hydration, it's meditation, it's fitness, it's reflection, it's community relationships. I think that kind of those are the ones that sum it up for me. But yeah, I never went back, luckily. Even after having a child and having some weight gain stuff, as soon as I dropped the relationship, the punitive nature of like, you ate that, you need to go then do this. As soon as that kind of fell away, I never had to think about it again, and everything became more in balance. It was just like, as soon as I stopped counting calories, everything becomes more harmonious and I become more steady and predictable in my behavior. So I know it's easier said than done, and kind of in line with part of why I stopped posting those aha moments was I think I realized that every individual, you've got to find it yourself, and it's really hard to, I'm sure you guys do it successfully because you're coaching, and that's really impactful, this one-on-one coaching. But in regards to like preaching to an audience of followers on Instagram, I think it's really hard to make an impact on a feed, unless they're coming to you for that. But it really is this self-discovery of all of those elements of wellness coming into balance with one another, where I think it no longer then is an obligation, it's a lifestyle. And you said it in your notes, like then you start realizing that giving we talk about community being a part of wellness, that not just having people you can count on, but being somebody that others can count on is also a part of being well. And so, yeah, everybody has their own journey to kind of discover what that means to them. But the more I read, the more I speak to others, the more this kind of resoundingly seems true.
Very beautifully put.
I absolutely. So whatever. I mean, I think one of the things people get hung up on is needing to make impacts in other areas, or like telling people what to do. Or it's like, to make any changes, they have to come from within you first.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly like you beautifully said. Like, it's reading, it's understanding, it's journaling, it's meditating, it's listening and observing how we are within this vessel.
Yes.
If that changes, then the energy, the vibrate, everything's gonna reflect the internal changes. Like exactly like you're saying, I could preach, I could post as much as I wanted on social media, but people aren't receptive to it. If their perception is completely off, I mean, what am I doing? I'm probably only doing myself harm, because then in turn I get to criticize, oh, no one liked that post.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do we become so authentic and true to ourselves? How are we so okay with being who we are that we can post something and get not one like and be okay with it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, obviously, but like that, I mean, how freaking cool would that be, that you're like, whoever needs to see this, great. If no one likes it, whatever.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I do kind of, I always feel like I want to hop back onto Instagram, because I do think that I've got things to say and to share that can help people. And I think I'm close to being at a point where it's not really about the likes or the comments. But for me, the decision to move away from it was just almost like a time management decision. You know, it was like, I can live this identity through my work and through my relationships just as powerfully as I can through my posting. And so I kind of took a long pause from it. But there's value in being able to just, I think, articulate truth with beauty and with things that you appreciate that resonate, and allow people to find that aha moment, which is what we're talking about. Everybody's got to find it for themselves. But if there are little ways that that can inspire that discovery around you, then that's contribution.
Yeah, it's like you're just planting seeds, just putting
Yes.
it out there, and then people will find it.
Yeah.
You're describing earlier, like, your kind of relationship to fitness before. It's like, what I heard that you didn't actually say was, it went from kind of punishing yourself or maybe feeling like you had to do it to you were doing it because you loved yourself.
Yes.
And it's like, as the relationship kind of shifts toward, I'm taking care of myself because I love myself, then I think your awareness raises with that. And then it's like each of those things and all of those steps, it's like, it's a no-brainer. Like, well, obviously, if I'm going to the gym or I'm working out or doing whatever because I love myself and it's what makes me feel better,
Yeah.
then you're naturally, it's going to carry over to like the foods that you choose to eat, or
Yeah.
how you spend your time, or the thoughts that you allow yourself to entertain. And it's like,
Yep.
all that stuff is so closely interconnected, and it's all the same, and it grows, like, from meditating and eating well and going for walks to then taking care of your community, and even like picking up trash that you walk by on the sidewalk because you feel better when your community is cleaner. And it's like,
Yeah.
these things spill over, I think, into every aspect of our lives. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Definitely.
really,
I mean, I think you kind of uncover something about me that I certainly need to reflect on and tend to, is that I don't always practice the most self-love. And I don't know that I think that I'm kind of I'm a giver, and a lot of my decision making and identity comes around caring for the things and people around me, including the Handlebar community and including my family. And I think that those two, specifically like my personal life and the Handlebar community, have crossed over and lived separately in different times in different ways. And sometimes, most frequently, caring for the Handlebar community at the expense of my family and friends, and myself. I'm so guilty of that I just give and give and give to this thing that has sometimes given back to me. But what I see now, 11 years in, is that largely this has existed outside of me, and the relationships that I've fed and planted seeds for are growing outside of me, and I will never really enjoy the benefits of that. But that's why I have to remember that it's my job, right? And it's not kind of, I'm not necessarily going to be getting from that. I have to focus on giving to myself, because like I said earlier, and there's not anybody that's going to show up and do that for me. It's not like you can kill yourself at work because someday that job is going to give you a hug and say you did it, and it's going to be all, the fulfillment that you needed for a lifetime. I need to work on self-care for the sake of self-love. I think what I find and do is self-care for my loved ones. I want to be the best version of myself so that I can show up for my husband, my son, my mom, my brothers. and because they need me. And so I do the things to give me energy so that I can keep sustaining those around me. And that can be, it's great, right? It's very important, but there is a missing link when it comes to sustainability that that I have to keep diving back into. And I think that's where I struggle the most. We talked about this on the last podcast, but I definitely struggle with kind of pleasure seeking behaviors, whether it be like smoking pot or, having a couple glasses of wine at the end of the night. And I think that I justify it as my self-care, as like, this is for me, because this is where I get to be selfish and this is what's just for me. And in reality, it's like if I could just tilt that perspective so that the wellness piece is for me too, So I'm definitely getting there. I mean, having my nails done is a reflection of my mental state. Like I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm taking time out of my week to go and take care of my physical appearance, because that brings me joy when I look in the mirror and I'm happy with what I see. That is a selfish thing. It's not for anybody else. It's for me. And so, yeah, I think that's that hugging yourself and accepting yourself and giving yourself grace and all of those things is such a key part of wellness that doesn't come easy.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. Like, I resonate, and I think a lot of people will too. It's for so long, I think, for myself personally, and the more women I speak to about this, I actually would love your opinion on it. I don't think we knew how to care and feel ourselves, like for what we needed. And like, I know you know me and know what I've gone through too. So I don't want to get onto it, but I too am in a very big caregiving role. And I've kind of realized, and I've been reflecting on this for a while, that I've kind of done this my whole life. It's just heightened right now, which I think is making me become hyper aware of it. But I have given so much to everybody. A part of it is people pleasing. Like, I want people to feel a certain way because that makes me feel comfortable around them, that I know that I feel like I'm doing something. But I've neglected so much of myself. I don't even know how to give myself what I need.
Yeah.
It's very much, it's cannabis. I don't drink anymore, but I certainly did. It's food. Food is a big one for me. Like, food is an emotional hug that I don't give myself.
Yep.
Been working on that for years, but like, yes, it's kind of discovering what each individual needs for their own self-care. Like, I love your aspect of like your nails. I have a girlfriend that is the same way, like that lights her up. Other people might not want that. They might want to like sit and cry in a shower, and that's their emotional release for the 10 or 15 minutes, which is beautiful. In this space that we're newly discovering ourselves, there is no right or wrong. It's just almost what feels good in the moment. But I think for so long, I didn't know what felt good in the moment.
Yeah.
And what I've journaled and reflected on is I was chasing like a dopamine hit. I just needed something to make me feel okay, like whether it be cannabis or food, like, ice cream, scrolling on social media. Like, who doesn't get a high off of like the scrolling? Like, that dopamine hit comes and it will sustain you for a short amount of time, but then you're just right back in the loop of whatever uncomfortable feeling. And it's just like never ending cycle. So it is becoming aware, observing just these patterns that are maybe showing up in your life, and then recognizing that you get to choose differently if you feel it's right in the time to do so. Like, kind of like we brought it back to, you can't force yourself to do something that you're unaware of or that you feel really uncomfortable doing. Like you said, it needs to naturally come from you.
Right.
And so it is like, there is that paradox in like, do I post this really great epiphany moment that I had, or do I not? And it's like, well, maybe someone reads it, doesn't like it, but that's what they needed to take them a step further.
Yeah.
It's this weird cyclical thing. And it's like, I think we're all, like I said, we're all trying to figure out who we are, but by telling our own individual stories, maybe it will resonate with someone.
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
And that, I think, like, I keep commending you on being so vulnerable, because it is helpful. It's like, oh yeah, I do that. And that's what I try to do on the podcast, but it's really scary to show the authenticity of who you are,
Yeah.
because so long society teaches you, don't do anything wrong, don't make mistakes, don't feel anything, don't feel the pain. It's like, but we kind of have to experience all of this so that we can help ourselves become better equipped to what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
that be a shitstorm or something really, really, really great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're
Yeah.
never taught to, I don't know how to handle if I were to win like $10 million tomorrow. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, we're
Yeah.
not taught to expect great things.
Yeah.
And but we kind of need to have our feeling foot in all these doors so that it
Mm-hmm.
can just better prepare us for like the next
Accepting.
steps on the path ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you said something about not knowing how to, maybe not the right word, but fuel yourself, or not knowing how
Hmm.
to give back to yourself, or kind of like figure out what you need. And I definitely find that can find that to be very true, personally. And I've justified it as I'm a busy business owner and I'm a mother. So there isn't really time for hobbies. There's not, because my husband is a creative, and he finds, he knows that he's going to be able to scratch his itch, fulfillment, and happiness on his own, by himself, by just creating, by
I love that.
writing, by picking up the guitar, and by being creative. And he always encourages me to do the same. And I've kind of held the excuse, well, my work is being creative, and that's my creative outlet. Like, I used to play the guitar a lot, and then I bounded the handlebar and I stopped, because I am creating every day in my work. And so I don't either have the time or the creative energy to then pick up a guitar and make music. And I do crave that. And I hope maybe someday, when I'm no longer in such a demanding role, that maybe that will come back to me. But recently said something that I've found a lot and that is, I think from, I can't remember, it was a book that he's reading. But the sentence is, survival is a creative act. And I've been able to kind of get out of bed in the mornings, and when I'm feeling like I need something, and when I want to find joy, and I don't just want to get a hit of dopamine, when I have the self-restraint to say, nope, that's the quick fix. When I think survival is a creative act, then I think, how can I creatively move through my tasks at hand and be scratching my creative itch in the normal day-to-day activities, in the picking my son up from school, in my preparing my own breakfast, how can I be creative in just the basic human, in fulfilling my basic human needs. And it really works. It's like a nice dance in life. It's just like bringing some beauty into the basics of what you're doing. And I think that definitely resonates with fitness. You can be so creative with how you move your body, and how you get your movement in the day. And like I said, food, you can be so creative with how you nourish yourself, and take that extra time to just be thoughtful about how you're preparing something, or how you're eating it, like, how are you creatively ingesting something? Like, are you thinking about the way that it tastes and the textures in your mouth? And that's all creativity and beauty and wonder. And the more that we can kind of harness that, I think the more like lasting joy we feel in the moment, and contentment in the moment, not just these hits of dopamine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love like the idea of finding a way to bring more joy into every moment, which is
Yeah.
that's the creative aspect of it. But in the same way that you said, like getting your nails done makes you feel good, and then you feel better about yourself, and then that energy that you get from feeling better about yourself is real. Like that's real energy that you
Yes.
can then turn around and share with others, and like you say, like you can give that energy to your family and your community.
Yes. Yes. And it's such a cliche, and it's so overused, but so true, that you just can't pour from an empty cup.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys know it to be true, but
Yeah,
it's like
I love it. I think
steal
that
the time back for yourself. You got to do it. You got to steal the time because it creates more time in the future.
yeah. And I feel like I kind of just thought of this when you were describing creativity and stuff. Creativity really is conscious awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're now bringing your awareness, which is consciousness, to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is breaking the habits of probably unconscious day-to-day tasks. Like you
Right.
said, picking up your son, making breakfast. Like I fall into that, but it's like, yeah, where can you be more creative in what you do, even if it's in the simplest change or just bringing a different energy to it? Like that's what you're creating. That's the power of being, a human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get to do that.
I never thought you can't be creative if you're not present.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna write that
Yeah.
quote down for him. I do.
No, yeah, I think that's 100% true. Otherwise, you can produce without being present,
Right.
but you can't be truly creative without being present. Otherwise it's definitely some form of regurgitation,
Yeah, you can't create anything new.
Right.
Well, wrapping up here, I feel like the last thing that I kind of just wanted to touch upon, and I feel like we're kind of just talked about it, just not directly, is how important mental health is within this whole kind of self-development. And I don't want to get too much into it because we're wrapping up here with time, but it is, you mentioned when you were speaking maybe a couple minutes ago about finding balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is a key part into the well-being of your mental state, meaning thoughts. Really, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what encompasses, but I mean, it's so much more broad, and I understand that, but it's because the handlebar does so much to help with mental illness and has developed this big community around it. Because I feel like we're saying, if our cup is full and we're pouring it into every other aspect, being whatever's going on in our lives, but it's barely got anything in it for us, where does that leave us
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
fulfill our individual roles here
Mm-hmm.
in life? So I guess it's not necessarily a question, but just kind of like how the handlebar has become a community of helping others with their mental health, and like what that kind of means to you, and like how that, because I know it's so important and you talk about it,
Yeah.
have so many events, and I do feel like that is part of why people have created this community. Like they know and please let me know if I have this message, but they almost like feel seen, they feel heard. You're creating a safe space, which is this safe community for people to show up in
Mm-hmm.
their authentic nature and say, hey, I mess up sometime, or I have these crazy thoughts. And it's like, yeah, again, we're all human here.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, I do think that Handle with Care has evolved into just being a fabric of what the handlebar is and what the handlebar community is. And that is a safe space where you come as you are to reflect on who you are, and to leave a slightly better, stronger, more accepting version of yourself. And I guess to the core of like mental health and mental illness and what that means to the handlebar community, I think it's just acknowledgement and acceptance, and hopefully, and I mean, I see it and I experience it in classes, outside of classes, just a freedom to openly talk about where you're at. The fact that you've got therapy once a week, the fact that you are currently on an SSRI, and how that feels. And, oh, I'm experiencing side effects because of this medication. I've literally overheard conversations in our studios that sound like that. And it's just like, to me, that's it, is to be able to just come in and and not only have it be okay, but have it sort of be expected that you're caring for your mental health, that that's a piece of your duty to this community and to the world around you. It's not just that it's okay to do so, but it's sort of like it's expected that you do that. You need to do that because nobody else is going to do it for you, and you're a piece of this puzzle. And so, yeah, I think that sort of sums it up for me. Is like and with regards to my own mental health, I'm just very open about what I deal with when and how it all kind of comes together. Like I've been on different antidepressants and SSRIs over the years. Well, I guess one of each. I was on Wellbutrin for many years and felt some benefits from it. And then when COVID hit, I really, really was destabilized, and I needed something to help with anxiety that was leading to depression. And that's how it works for me is that when my anxiety gets to a point where I'm not controlling it, then it's like it beats me down into a depressed state. And so I went on an SSRI, and it really, really helped. And I could notice the changes and notice the differences. And my personal choice was to, when my circumstance settled down, I wanted to come off of that, and know that that's there for me. And I feel very lucky that that's the case, that like I could circumstantially lean on a medication to help my mental health. But yeah, I think that's kind of like I said, just like overhearing conversations in studio where people are talking about conversations they had with their therapist, or a certain med cocktail that they're on and how it's impacting their ability to get up and show up for class. Like that type of acceptance leads just to a greater adoption of like owning your own mental health. And that's what the world needs, is just everybody to take ownership for the fact, like, your mental health is your own responsibility and nobody's going to do it for you. And let's celebrate it, but let's encourage it big time. Because the more people that do take ownership, the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that so much, like, the hardest part for so many people is assuming everybody else is doing great and that they're the only one suffering. So when you have a community where people are open and sharing with one another, and you can hear other perspectives, it it brings more awareness to your situation.
Yes. And that reminder that you're not alone is like all people need.
Yeah. I love it. We got really deep today. I'm so glad that you, like I said, you're vulnerable in stories. It's uplifting, and it helps shine light for other people, right? Like, you're carrying a really big torch, and I appreciate that. And it's like, that's all we can do. If we can shine ourselves and just illuminate a path for others, and then they take the torch down themselves. It's like, we can't do it for them, but we can just give our light when it's needed.
Yes. I agree.
Okay. Jess, tell us kind of like the updates of Handle Bar. Like, if you want us to direct anybody, like we'll link your website and stuff, but keep us up to date with what's been going on with the Handle Bar community before we let you go here.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we've got 7 locations, and, last fall we converted our first location in South Boston to a new concept called Hotbox. And it is still a Handle Bar brand. So it's now kind of our bigger brand now is HB Boston. So Hotbox and Handle Bar. And now we have got 5 cycling studios called the Handle Bar, and we have almost 2 Hotbox locations. One of our locations is under construction right now, being converted to Hotbox. And what Hotbox is a mat-based facility offering classes heated with infrared, which we didn't even get a chance to get into, but there's so many benefits of infrared heat and red light. And
third episode.
Yeah. So we're harnessing that at Hotbox, and it's been going wonderfully. It's still music driven, community oriented, class, group fitness. But like I said, it's mat based. So instead of approaching fitness on a bicycle, we're approaching it kind of on all fours, and we're getting mobile and working and give us an opportunity to bring mindfulness in a whole new way, in a bigger way. So we've done some dabbling with meditation classes in that facility. And then every single class, whether it be flow, which is our yoga modality, or sculpt, which is strength, Pilates inspired strength and cardio. And both of them start with a real mindfulness component and end with a real mindfulness component. So that's nice to be able to bring silence into a space that's otherwise filled with movement and volume. At the beginning and end of each class, there's some silence and some reflection on the mat. And it's resonated with the community. Our memberships are up because there's so much more value in an HB membership now that you can get all of these different class types under one membership. So business-wise, it's been a great move. And then, selfishly, I'm just stoked to be able to be supporting Handle Bar instructors and getting a lot more types of fitness in within one community.
I love it.
So good.
It sounds amazing. We're going to need to check it out, to be honest.
Yes, you guys have been to that space. The space in Southeast.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
So special, and it remains special, but now with a new name, a new face.
Yeah, I feel like the beautiful way to just end this conversation of it's evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's the elevating of the brand in yourself. It's like a direct reflection of how you've grown, how you've understood what you need is what also everybody needs. And it's just, it's so incredible. We're so excited. We will for sure link your website of the Handle Bar to down there. Anything else where we need to like direct people?
No, I don't think so. We've got tons of events and fitness challenges, and those are all the ways that we keep the community engaged. So even if you're not gonna, you're not in Boston regularly to enjoy a membership, it's definitely something worthwhile to stay in tune for our special events, because it's worth the trip for a bike to brunch, or an outdoor class followed by a group guided meditation, and just a cool thing to take part in, even if it's only once in a while.
That's awesome. We love it. Well, Jess, we can't thank you enough again for coming on and talking very deeply with us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.